Let's speak to Sahlulele Luzipo, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy. Dr. Luzipo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I mean, 7 years later, the bickering continues over who needs to do what here for this container to effectively be retrieved. A company saying that it is willing to do this. At the same time, it looks like this process is then being held up. It cannot be right that 7 years later, these families are still waiting.
Yes, that is correct. It can't be right, but the truth and the reality is that from a point of view of what becomes the role of a portfolio committee, we have done ours. Two things that the portfolio committee is primarily responsible for. One is to make recommendations of what of the view has to be done. Secondly, is to then hold the executive to account. We, as a portfolio committee, have done and gone through the process. In most situations, we have been working very closely with the families, as well as those that have got an interest to find a solution. Amongst other issues, we have made our recommendation unanimously agreed and supported by all parties in the National Assembly. Today, obviously, we had, for the sake of making sure that that information is is made available to the families. Yeah. We had to also print and give them what the committee has done so far.
Are you able? Pardon me, Dr. Luzipo, pardon me for coming in there. Are you able to give us just a brief, very, very briefly, of what you've recommended and what you've handed over then to the families?
Look, obviously, like I said, that unfortunately, that's how far. When it comes to implementation and operational matters, it then rests with those that are responsible for that. Amongst other recommendations, let's start first by saying the company has demonstrated that it is willing and it is engaging in processes of agreeing to a purchase of the mine. You will recall
which
also
company is this, Vantage Goldfields or Aquamanzi?
No, Aquamanzi is the one that is.
They want to come in, yes. So which are you talking about? Vantage Goldfields?
Vantage Gold, okay. That is now sabotaging the entire process. One of the things you will recall is that this is a private. When it comes to a mining right, it means the person who access and or owns a mining right is personally and primarily responsible for any activity that takes place. That includes accidents. The second thing is that if it is an area that would say it is a private ownership, then in order for that, the state to make an intervention, that area will have to be declared a disaster area, so that you can then put public funds in a private land. The third issue, therefore, that is what informed the committee to make a recommendation that that area has to be declared a disaster area. The second thing, which is exactly what the company is doing, the company has already shown willingness to sell. And the problem now is that the same company that is responsible, liable, and found to be guilty for failure to oblige with health and safety requirements is the same company that is expected to accept the purchase proposal. That is impossible to happen, because in the event that situation prevails, it will actually mean that the criminal charges that they are faced will then be able to fit, and therefore it will prove beyond reasonable doubt that those three workers would have passed on. And if that is the case of murder will kick in. And therefore we don't see and believe that they will be willing to ensure that the question of a sale is successful. Hence, we then made the proposal that the state must expropriate the mine with reasonable compensation, because in any way they are selling. And that is the issue. The third point is that it is possible for the state to be able to retrieve or recoup the amount that they would have been able to do that by making sure that they get an appropriate buyer in this case, and please, it must be understood, we're not saying or prescribing which company must take over.
Yes.
But a company that is able to make a better proposal can be able to take that responsibility, and therefore we will then be able, probably, amongst other things, that company must say, whilst it will be concurrently doing mining, it will also take responsibility to retrieve those workers.
I suppose then, in the meantime, as you say, all of it, now hinges on whether or not it will be taken and then implemented.
Yes, obviously. One of the things also that I think I must raise as a recommendation, which is a common experience that we are having, is that if you look, part of the problem sometimes relates to the fact that when the government, especially specifically the department, issues a mining right, it issues the mining right under the act which is called the MPRDA. But when it comes to issues of financial challenges, they will then resolve what we call the Companies Act. Now, the problem with the Companies Act, it allows the use of business to practitioners, which then substitutes the responsibility of government to issue mining rights, because currently, for instance, if truth be to be told, is that the actual people that now are riding on the mining right is not the people who were issued the mining right, it is the business rescue practitioners. That is why we talked about the issue of harmonization of the MPRDA together with the Companies Act.
All right, Dr. Luzipo, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it for this evening, just to see then what happens if all of what you're talking about may be adopted, and we see this area being declared a disaster area, and also potentially see things move for the families who are looking for answers. That is Sahlulele Luzipo, who's a chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy.